Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I am Dr. Sadia Zafar and today we will discuss about the environmental impact assessment methodology. As we have discussed in detail about the environmental impact assessment and its methodology. In the methodology of the environmental impact assessment, we have discussed some methods like ad hoc method, map overlays method, impact checklist, matrix methods, and network methods. Determination of environmental impact importance. The matrix approach discussed in the previous section, the need for tables presenting the comparisons of alternatives both require a statement of the impact on the particular environmental area given a specific action. This calls for some kind of measurement in most general sense. First, one must measure the impact itself, that is the magnitude, and then one must evaluate the level of impact in terms of its relative value to appropriate constituency. In the first case, one is looking for data about the change in environment and must rely on scientific knowledge. In second case, one is looking for relatives value of the society and the segments of society concerned in evaluation of a project. Here is the potential impact. The measures like number of dwelling units displaced and the number of units of farm land displaced, like the highway corridor alternatives. They have different numbers of dwelling unit displaced and the number of units of farm land displaced. This graph is representing the value of environmental impact with relation to the number of units of farm land displaced. Steps for determining the weightings of importance. In step 1, select a group of individuals for evaluation and explain to them in detail the weighting concept and use of rankings and weightings. In second step, prepare a table with columns corresponding to the range of values which can be assigned as a source of importance to each impact area. For example, if 5 values are possible, there would be 5 columns. The rows in the table would correspond to the impact areas being ranked as to importance. In third step, give a copy of the table developed in second step to each individual evaluator and repeat steps 4 to 9 until no further changes in the table entries are desired. In fourth step, ask each individual to place an X or other signifying mark in each column for each impact area. Thus, a value of importance is assigned to each impact area. In step 5, ask all individuals to compare the marked columns on a pair-wise basis to ensure that the impact areas are ordered on the proper relative basis in their opinion. If not, they should reassign their scores so as to have the desired relative ordering of the impact areas. For example, on a scale from 1 to 10, if a value of 10 has been assigned to impact area A and it appears that A is twice as important as B, impact should be assigned a value of 5. In step 6, ask each individual to add the value or importance score select for each of the impact areas to obtain a total. In 7th step, the individual should then divide the value selected for each impact area by total obtained in 6th step to determine the desired weighting for each area. In 8th step, collect the tables from each individual's evaluator and average the weightings determined for each impact area, obtain a group or composite average. In 9th step, present the averages obtained to individual evaluators and ask them to compare the group weightings with other derived by each of them individually in 7th step. In last and 10th step, if anyone or more individual desires to change the assignment of scores based on what the group decided, to 4th step and repeat the entire process. If none desire to change their scores, stop the experiment because the impact area relative weightings of importance will have been derived. This table is representing the example of development of impact area importance weighting. The impact area that has low importance, average importance or high importance, and the impact area like the park requirements, school age students generated, trips generated, police protection, fire protection, public service cost, total revenues, employments, electricity consumption and natural gas consumption, solid waste generated, sewage discharge, and water consumption. That has overall impact is 43, that weighting the 1. There are some steps for development of value functioning. In estimating the value function for each impact measures, five steps have to be followed. First step, obtain the scientific information when available on the relationship between the measures and the parameters and the quality of the environment. In second step, order the impact measure scale so that the lowest value of the parameter is 0 and it increases in positive direction, no negative values. In third step, divide the quality scale, that is 0 to 1, into equal intervals and express the relationship between this interval and the parameter. Continue this procedure until a curve is constructed. In fourth step, average these values as expressed in curves over all persons in the experiment. For parameters based just on judgment, value functions should be determined by a representative population cross-section. In fifth step, replicate this experiment with the same group or another group of persons to increase the reliability of the functions. This table is representing the example of dissolved oxygen level versus the environmental quality. Here the level of dissolved oxygen is in mg per liter and the relative environmental quality value at each level. The level of dissolved oxygen is 0 to 10 and the relative environmental quality value is 0 to 1. This graph is representing the value function for dissolved oxygen as a measure of water quality. As the dissolved oxygen increases, the relative environmental quality is also increases. The network method approaches attempt to expand upon the matrix theme by introducing a cause condition effect network which allows the identification of cumulative or indirect effects. The network is actually shown in the form of a tree, also called a relevance or impact tree, and is used to relate and record secondary, tertiary, and higher order effects. To develop a network of this type basically requires answering a series of questions relative to each of the project activities, such as what are the primary impact areas, what are the secondary impacts within these areas, and what tertiary impacts flows from these, and such type of other questions. This is the approach which must be followed. This figure is representing the network method conceptual framework of the impact networks. The project activities that have the primary impact, secondary impact, and then the tertiary impacts. These are the results of the components of the project activities. This figure is representing the example of impact tree for new freeway construction in established downtown business district. The primary impact: removal of homes, removal of business that have the secondary impact, and then tertiary, and then so on. The removal of houses, this is the primary impact, and the secondary is loss of the residential property tax revenue, reduction in community housing stocks, and displacement of the people. And the tertiary impact of the secondary impact, loss of the residential property tax revenue, will be the decrease in the community residential revenue and increase in property tax rate. And the reduction in community housing stocks, that has the tertiary impact, is increased demand for housing and increase in selling prices of available homes. And displacement of the people, that is the secondary impact, that has the tertiary impact, like the payment of relocation expenses, change in local school enrollment that resulted the increased space in local schools, and the change in area population that resulted lower state subvention revenues. And the primary impact, that is the removal of businesses, that has secondary impact, like loss of commercial property, tax revenue, loss of scales, tax revenue, and loss of jobs. Loss of commercial property tax revenue and loss of sale tax revenue resulted in decrease in community commercial revenue and increase in property tax rate. And due to the loss of jobs, that resulted the increase in the number of unemployed, that resulted into increase in welfare payments and increase in unemployment benefits paid. This figure is representing the impact that a primary, secondary and tertiary impact due to the project activities. Consider the impact tree given above, in which there are two basic project activities, say A and B. In an activity, A has two primary impacts, three secondary impacts and two tertiary impacts. Activity B has two primary impacts, four secondary impacts and four tertiary impacts. There are 10 branches of this tree given by the chains of events shown in part B. Now let Pi is the probability that the events on branch I occur. For I, that is 1 to 10, also for each impact X, that defines the M into X, that may be the positive or negative magnitude of impact X, and Ix, that is the importance weighting of impact X, where both Mx and Ix have values ranging over some supposed scale, for example from 1 to 10, then we define the impact score for a given branch of impact tree to be summation of Mx and Ix, where the summation is overall impacts events X on the branch. For example, the impact score for branch 1 is given as below. In a similar way, one could compute the impact score of the other 9 branches. Now, since there is some uncertainty as to whether or not the identified primary, secondary and tertiary impacts will actually occur, one might weight these branch impact scores by their probability of occurrence. So, the conclusion is checklist, matrix, network methods deal primarily with 4 basic aspects: identification of impacts, measurement of impacts, interpretation of impacts, communication of results, and further, all the methods differ from one another in one or more way. So this is all about the environmental impact assessment methodology. There are some references, and thank you so much for your attention.